right, we'll go ahead and begin the class. My name is Nova. Welcome. So this class is called Simple Budgets with Excel. Making a personal budget that tracks our spending every month is one of those things that we always hear we should do, but it doesn't always happen. For some, it's not that fun and can be constricting, and others may not know where to begin when it comes to budgeting. However, creating a budget is an essential step towards financial stability. That's because budgets rely on balance. And if you spend less in one area, you can spend more in another. You can save money for a large purchase that you may have in the future, or you can build an emergency fund. You can increase your savings or invest in building wealth. So today we'll go over the benefits of keeping track of your expenses, some tips to help you become more financially literate, and about halfway through, we'll demo how to create your own monthly expense tracker in Excel. Once again, if you have any questions, please type them in the comment box, and my partner will help to facilitate the chat. Before we begin, let me see. Are any of you all familiar with Excel and some of the things that they have available, like templates or things like that? Okay, that's good. Perfect. So for everyone to be aware, this is not an introductory class to Excel. So we're operating on the understanding that you kind of know just the basics of getting around in the program. Okay, so before we begin, I'll go ahead and talk just a little bit more about budgets. So what is budgeting and why is it important? A budget is a summary that compares and tracks your income and expenses for a defined period of time, typically for 1 month. A written monthly budget is a financial planning tool that allows you to plan how much you'll spend and save each month, and it also allows you to track your spending habits. A budget will show you how much money you expect to bring in. Then you can compare that to your required expenses and your discretionary spending. Required expenses could be things like rent and certain utilities, essentials that you need to pay. And discretionary spending could be things like entertainment or eating out, spending that you could do without, or that you could be flexible on. You can view budget as a tool for achieving your financial goals. Ultimately, the result of your new budget will show you where your money is coming from, how much you have, and where it all goes each month. Okay, so these are just a couple of tips that we can kind of follow while we're creating our monthly budget. The first thing is you want to gather your financial paperwork. So before you begin, you could gather up all of your financial statements. This includes like bank statements, any investment accounts that you have, your recent utility bills, paycheck stubs, credit card bills, receipts, usually ideally from the last month or the last 3 months, depending on how well you're saving your information, and any auto loan statements, mortgage. You basically want to have access to any information about your income and your expenses. One of the keys to budget making process is to create a monthly average. The more information you can dig up, the better. Now, if you don't have some of the information, that is okay. You can start with your current month and calculate your expenses at the end of the first month to help you kind of start your way and build up in the future. The next thing you're going to want to do is calculate your income. So how much income you expect each month. If your income is in the form of like a regular paycheck where taxes are automatically deducted, then using the net income amount is fine. If you're self-employed or have outside sources of income like child support or Social Security, you can include those amounts as well. Record this total income as your monthly amount. Then the next thing is to create a list of monthly expenses. You want to write down all of the expenses you expect to have during a month. This could include mortgage payments, car payments, insurance, grocery, utilities, any entertainment, personal care, child care, transportation costs. If you have any student loans, you can add those on as well. If you're having some trouble understanding where your money is going, you can use your bank statements and receipts or credit card statements to help identify some of your spending for the initial setup of your spreadsheet for your budget. Then you're going to want to determine your fixed and variable expenses. So fixed expenses are mandatory expenses that you pay the same amount each time. This can include items like your mortgage or rent payments, any car payments, if you have like a set fee for internet service or TV service, if you have like regular childcare, each month this number is not going to fluctuate. That's what a fixed expense means. If you plan to save a fixed amount or pay off a certain amount of debt each month, you're also going to want to include that as well. A variable expense, these are types of spending that will change from month to month, such as your groceries or your gas for your car, eating out, things like that. Start assigning a spending value to each category that you have, beginning with your fixed expenses, and then you can estimate how much you'll need to spend per month on your variable expenses. And then the next step is once you have your calculated income and you've determined some of your expenses that you expect to have for the month, you're going to want to total your monthly income and expenses. If your income is higher than your expenses, then you're off to a good start. This extra money means you can put funds towards areas of your budget, such as retirement savings or paying off debt. If your expenses are more than your income, that means you're overspending and you need to make some changes. Which leads us to the next point. If you're in a situation where expenses are higher than your income, you can find areas in your variable expenses that you can cut. So you can look at places you can reduce your spending, like eating out or eliminating a category, like maybe canceling your gym membership. So you can kind of assess where there's wiggle room for you to decrease some of your spending habits. Aim to have your income and your expense columns to be equal. This equal balance means all of your income is accounted for and you're budgeted toward a specific expense or a saving goal. Okay. So now that we have talked about or given you an idea of what a monthly budget is and why it's important, let's look at how we can use Microsoft Excel to track our expenses. Excel offers several templates that you can choose from, or what we'll be doing today is building our own. And so we'll go ahead and transition. This screen here, you can see there's just an example of what we're going to be creating today. And then we'll go ahead and move from there. Let me exit out of this. Okay. So are you able to see the budget that I have up? Okay. I'll go ahead and first show you a little bit on what we have going on here for this monthly budget. So we have our category here where we have some of our expenses down here in our expense section, like food, car, health, and you're able to customize your categories. You do not need to create what we have here. You want to kind of look at your own expenses and what your lifestyle is like and what you're spending, and you can change these categories accordingly. Up top, we have our income. So if you have here for this particular spreadsheet, there's two sources of income. You can, if you have a spouse, or a significant other that's also contributing to your monthly budget, you can, instead of saying job A salary and job B salary, you can put their names here. What the template is doing here, we have some formulas embedded in the template that we'll be creating that will find the difference of what your monthly budget or your expected cost is down here. And it's going to calculate the difference based on what we've put in our monthly actual expenses in this column. And the difference will tell you whether or not we went over or if we're under. If you see like a red number, that means we need to be a little bit alert and kind of assess where our spending is and see if we can change some of our spending so that we're able to stay under budget. Okay. And so now we'll go ahead and do a step-by-step on how to build this budget that we have on our screen. So I'm going to just open up a new spreadsheet here so that we're working in the same spreadsheet. So first I'm going to, this is just to help the viewers see what I'm doing. We're going to just go ahead and format the spreadsheet a little bit so that you're able to see it a little bit better. So I'm just going to highlight the whole spreadsheet, clicking on this button up top. And I'm going to change the column width. And so to do that, we're going to go to Format up here on our ribbon. I'm going to click on the Format button and come down to Column Width. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to set the column width to 20. And that just makes the column a little bit larger so that when I type in my information, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. And then I'm also going to increase the font size. You don't necessarily have to do this, but this is just so that everyone is able to see what I'm working on. Okay. So now to first start off our monthly budget spreadsheet, I'm going to enter in the categories and label the column first. So in B1, I'm going to go ahead and type in category. Okay. And then in cell C1, I'm going to go ahead and type in monthly budget. And then in cell D1, I'm going to type in monthly actual. These categories or these headers can be labeled differently if you want. This is what will help me understand what each section means. But if you have a different word that you'd like to use in your spreadsheet, you're able to do that. In cell E1, I'm going to type in difference. Okay. And just for formatting purposes, I'm going to highlight cell A1 through E1. I'm going to bold, click on bold. Then I'm going to click on center alignment. You can find these buttons at the top of the ribbon under the home tab. Okay. And then I'm going to fill in the color. And for today, I'll just do that. There's no meaning behind the colors. It's completely up to your preference. So whatever color you'd like to use, you can do that. Okay, so now that we have our columns labeled, I'm going to go ahead and label the different sections. So our income, our expense section is what I'm going to label next. So in cell A2, I'll go ahead and enter income. And then I will highlight cell A2 all the way to E2. And I'm going to click on the merge and center button up top on our ribbon. I'm also going to bold this. And I will fill in the color. Since it's income coming in, I'll choose a green color. Okay. And then for our expenses section, in cell A6, I'll go ahead and type expenses. Okay. And then similar formatting to the income, we're going to highlight cell A6 through E6, merge the cells together, bold the font, and we'll fill in the color. I'll choose this blue color here. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and label the different rows. So this is, we'll first start off with our income. Under column or cell B3, I'm going to enter job A, salary. And under cell B4, I'm going to type in job B, salary. And in cell B5, I'm going to enter income subtotal. I'll go ahead and highlight cell A5 and B5. And this is just for formatting purposes. I'm going to merge and center. And then click on the align to the right button. And then also bold. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and enter our categories for the expenses section. So in A7, in cell A7, we're going to go ahead and type in food. And in A8, I'll type in car. In A9, I'll type in health. In A10, I'm going to type in utilities. In A11, I'll type in debt. In A12, I'll type in miscellaneous. Then I'm going to go ahead and highlight the cells from A7 to A12. And I'm going to click on align to the right. Okay. Now in the column B, where we have our category, I'll go ahead and enter some of the subcategories for what we initially put in. And to add a row, what you're going to want to do is you're going to click on the row that you want to add a blank row. You're going to right click on it and you're going to click on insert, and it'll push down what you have and insert a blank row. So under the food section, we're going to have two categories. One will be groceries, and the other will be eating out. And once again, when you build your spreadsheet, you can make it customizable to whatever your lifestyle is. So when you look at your expenses, you can go ahead and categorize your expenses based on what you see you're spending on. So under car, we're going to go ahead and put gasoline. And we're going to enter a blank row and put maintenance. And under health, we're going to go ahead and click on cell B11, and we're going to enter fitness. I'm going to add a few more rows under health. Under fitness, I'm going to enter doctor visits. And medicine, a category for medicine. So if I have any prescriptions or anything like that, I'll enter that information here. And then under utilities, we have water and sewer. I'll add several more rows for this category. And then under water and sewer, I'll go ahead and add gas, electricity, internet and cable, and cell phone. Under the debt section, I'm going to add a couple more rows again. And then add auto loan for the first one. And student loans for the next one. And mortgage or rent. This category. And under miscellaneous, I'll go ahead and enter entertainment. And finally, veterinary. So now I have all of my expenses listed out here in column B under category. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add some formulas to our spreadsheet so that we can calculate what our expenses are and how they relate to our monthly budget that we plan for ourselves. Okay. Before I do that, just for visual purposes, I'm going to go ahead and highlight what we currently have here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on borders, and I'll click on all borders just so that I'm able to see what's going on in our spreadsheet a little bit better. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and add some of our formulas. So in cell C5, we're going to go ahead and use the sum function to add cells C3 and C4 To do this, you're going to click on cell C5, and then on our formulas function button here, you can click on that, and you'll see a pop-up come up. And the first function that we have is sum, so we can just go ahead and click on that. Click OK. And here we're going to go ahead and click on cell C3, and we're going to click and drag down to cell C4. So we want cell C5 to give us the sum of job salary A, the monthly budget that we expect, and job salary B. I'm going to click on OK. Right. We next want cell D5 to do the same thing. So there's a couple things that we can do here. We can either go ahead and repeat the process by clicking on the function button and entering or highlighting the cells that we want to have summed for us. Or what we can do is we can go to cell C5, and we can see there's this little tiny box at the bottom right corner. When you see the cursor turn into this solid plus sign, we can go ahead and click and drag that over to cell D5. And what that will do is that it will automatically add the formula that was in cell C5. And if you look at our formula bar up here, and if you see the formula that's entered into this cell D5, you'll see that it was able to recognize that it needs to calculate cell D3 and D4, even though we had clicked and dragged from cell or column C. So that's a nice little function that Excel is able to recognize when we enter formulas like that. Okay. Now we're going to do a similar thing down here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and enter some of our subtotals here. So in cell B24, we're going to go ahead and enter expense subtotal. And then we'll add our net income on cell B25. And then I'm just going to go ahead and format the table again with all borders. I'm just going to highlight the cells and click on our all borders format up top, so that's easy for me to see what's going on. Just for formatting purposes, I'm going to click on cell A24 and B24, click and highlight those two cells. I'll go ahead and merge the cells together. Select right, align right, and then I'll bold that. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for cell A25 and B25. So I'll highlight those two cells, merge and center, align to the right, and bold. Okay. And now what we'll do for cell C24, what we're going to be doing is we're going to want to have whatever budgeted expenses that we want, that we're going to be entering in our section here for columns C7 through C23. We want our expense subtotal in cell C24 to add all of that up for us. Okay, so we're going to use the sum function. Another way to get to the sum function, up top on our tabs, we have formulas. So we can click on formulas and we can see that we have either auto sum or insert function. So we'll go ahead and click on insert function. And it has sum for us right there. So we're going to click on OK. And we're going to click and highlight the range C7 all the way down to C23. Okay, we're going to click on OK. All right, and similar to what we did up top on cell D5, we're going to click on this small button, and we're going to click and drag it over to cell D24. Okay. And that will, what that essentially does is it gives us the sum for all of the numbers entered in cells D7 through D23. Okay. And when we click on D24, we can see in our formula bar up top, that is the formula that's going to be used to give us our result here. Okay. Now for the difference in this column, what we want to do for our income is we want it to give us what the difference is I see the question in the comment box. When we drag the sum formula box over, how many cells can we drag and repeat? You can drag and repeat as many cells as you need to. If you, for example, if we wanted this, if we wanted to drag this formula over 5, 6, 7 cells, you'll see that it does so. And it will recognize the category or the column. So it's not going to add the columns from cell or from the cell F. So you can do that as many as you need to. So I'm just going to undo that. Okay. So for the difference column in our income section, what we want to do is we want to calculate what the difference is from what we actually brought in with our paycheck based on what our expected income was. So in order to do that, we're going to click on cell E3 because that's where we want our results to be entered. We're going to subtract. In order to start a formula or function, you're going to enter or you're going to press the equal sign. This will let Excel recognize that you're entering a formula. And so what you want to do is in cell E3, you're going to type in, or you're going to click on cell D3, and you're going to subtract it. So you're going to press the minus sign, and you're going to subtract it from cell C3. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. So just for letting you guys see what this function does, let's say we have our monthly projected budget as $2,200, and we brought in only $1,800. This is just for example purposes. You can see that it gives us a negative 400. So when we look at our monthly budget, it'll alert us and let us know that we need to look closer into why we have this difference here, because we want it to be 0. So that's what this formula helps us calculate. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that right now, but I just wanted to show you guys what that does. Okay, and so we want the same thing, the same formula to happen for our cell E4. So like before, we're going to just autofill the formula by clicking and dragging down, and that will do. And we can double check our work up on our formula bar to see if it actually did it or not. And yes, we have the formula saying it's subtracting cell D4 with C4. Okay. Now in cell E5, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and autofill the formula from the previous cell. Okay, and we'll double check our work up here with our formula bar and see that, yes, that's what we want. We want it to be D5 minus C5. Yes, I'll go in the comment section. We have, should we all make the, should we format the cells in a currency format? And I'll go ahead and show that in a little bit after we enter our formulas. I'll go ahead and show you how to format it so that the numbers show up as currency. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and basically do the same thing that we did above. We're going to find the difference. Now there is a slight change in our formula for our expenses. For the income, what we did was we subtracted what our actual income was with what our expected, what we budgeted for. On our expenses section, we're going to flip that over. What we're going to do is we're going to find the difference between what our projected or expected cost was with what we actually brought in or what we actually spent that month. For E5, yes, so what I basically did was I clicked and dragged the formula, the autofill formula from cell E4. So you click on this bottom square and you click and drag it down to cell E5 so that we have a similar formula. Essentially, it is taking cell D5 and subtracting it with C5. Okay. So for our first category, finding the difference between what our projected or budgeted cost is with our what we actually spent, we're going to enter the formula. You're going to enter the equal sign, and then we're going to click on cell C7, and we're going to subtract it with cell D7. Okay. And then I'll just go over real quickly what this does. So for example, let's say we projected that our grocery expenses for the month is going to be $200. Okay. And if we were under budget, let's say we spent only $150, you can see that the difference is $50 and there's no negative sign, so we don't need to be alert. We actually saved some money and we can repurpose the money that we saved, or we can save it into our savings account or something like that. But what happens if we went over budget? So let's say we spent $210. So here you can see that the numbers change to a -10. And that's when we would need to be alert to see what happened that month where we went over, and we can try to see how we can adjust some of our spending so that we don't go over budget. Okay, I'll go ahead and delete these just so that we can go ahead and continue to format the spreadsheet, and then we'll enter our numbers here in a little bit. So similar to what we did in our cells in our income section, we're going to go ahead and autofill this formula all the way down to row 23. So in order to do that, we're going to click on cell E7. We're going to click on the little tiny square in the bottom corner of the cell. Click and drag that all the way down to row or cell E24. We're going to go ahead and release that. Okay. Now you can see that all of these cells in this column has that similar formula with its respective row. Okay. The next, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and format the numbers so that it's easier for you to see. This is your preference, how you would like to see the numbers. So for example, let's go ahead and highlight this top section here. This is where our numbers are going to be. We'll click on the tab, our number tab. Where it says general, you have this small little drop down arrow. Let's click on that and we'll go down to more number formats. Here you'll see under the number tab, we'll click on currency. And here we will have the decimal place value to 2. And then it's up to you if you want to see the $ symbol. For me, it makes it a little bit kind of, there's a lot of stuff going on, so it might be a little bit distracting for some people. I like to select the red numbers. It just helps me stay alert visually when there is a difference and I went over budget or something like that. So you can select that, and it just, for the exercise purpose, we'll go ahead and use the red number for showing any negative numbers. I'll click on OK. So now you can see that the numbers changed into the format that we wanted. And when we enter something here in the empty column, you'll see it'll go ahead and change the value to the format that we wanted. We'll go ahead and do a similar format for the section cell range C7 to E25. So you're going to click and drag to highlight this whole section, and we'll go ahead and repeat what we just did. Some of the functions or buttons that you can see right underneath general, you can increase or decrease the decimal spaces or values with these buttons here. So we'll go ahead. Oh, I didn't do that. Maybe because it's 0. We'll go ahead and click here. Let's just see if it shows it here or not. Yeah, so since we have a value here, you can see that the decimal value increased. And if we want to decrease it back to 2 place values, it'll go ahead and decrease. So you can adjust it that way too. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add the formulas for our expense subtotal and our difference. This will be similar to what we have above. So we're going to go ahead and click and drag this down. So here we see on our formula bar when we have clicked E24, it's taking what value we have in cell C24 and subtracting it with the value we have in D24. Okay. For our net income, what we're going to want to do for this section is we want to subtract what our monthly budget was to what our expected expense is. Okay. To do this, we're going to click on cell C25, and we're going to press the equal sign to indicate that we want to have a formula here. And you can either type in cell C5 or you can click on it to indicate the first cell. Then we're going to press the minus or negative sign. And then we're going to go ahead and you can either type in or click on cell C24. Okay. And then we'll press enter. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing for cell D25. We'll use the autofill formula. And in order to do that, we'll click on C25. We'll click on the small little box in the bottom corner of the cell. Once the cursor changes to the solid plus sign, we'll click and drag it over to cell D25 and release. And just to double check our work so that it's calculating the correct cells, we're going to look at our formula bar up top. And we're going to see that it is calculating cell D5 and subtracting it with cell D24. And that's what we want. Okay. And then finally, in cell E25, we're going to enter the formula D25, which is this formula here, or this cell here. And we're going to subtract it with cell C25. So we'll go ahead and just enter the formula in. Okay. I just went ahead and typed it in so you can see what it looks like when you type it in. Okay. And now we'll press enter. Okay. And because we had a value here, you can see that it's already calculating. We had the expected net income of $2,200. And because we didn't enter anything in for our monthly actual, what we actually earned, it's showing in our difference a negative $2,200. Okay. All right. So right now, how we have our budget set up, our spreadsheet, we should be able to use this as a template. There's one more section that I'm going to create for our monthly budget, but this is optional if you'd like to use it or not. We'll go ahead and enter a savings section. So I will go ahead and do this a little bit quickly, but essentially we're doing similar things that we did in the above two sections, and I'll kind of talk our way through it. So in cell B26, I'm going to go ahead and enter savings. Then I'm going to go ahead and highlight A26 and B26, merge those cells, or actually this is the full section here. So I'm going to highlight A26 all the way to E26, merge the cells, and bold. And I'm going to fill in a different color. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter in our categories. This in savings, you can add some categories that you want to save up for. So let's say you want to set up an emergency fund. Let's say you want to save up for an annual vacation. We can enter that here. And if you have like a upcoming wedding or something like that, we can go ahead and save that here. And then we're going to enter savings, subtotal, and finally the discretionary fund at the end. And this will tell us what we have, the amount of extra money we have based on our calculated expenses. And so with that money, if there is anything left over, you can choose what you want to do with that money. To format, we're going to click on cell B30 and A30. We're going to go ahead and merge. Click on right align and bold. And we'll do the same for cell A31 and B31. Going to merge and right align, bold. And we'll go ahead and highlight this new section. We'll add all borders. Okay. And then, similar to what we did above in the sections, we'll go ahead and enter our formulas for here. So we're going in cell C30, we're going to enter the sum formula. So we're going to click on the functions formula next to our formula bar. Click on OK for sum, and we'll click and highlight cells C27 through C29. And click OK. And then we'll click and autofill cell C30 to cell D30. Okay. And in cell E30, we're going to type in the formula equal sign C30 minus D30. Okay. And that's going to give us the difference between our projected savings and what we actually saved. And in the discretionary fund row, we'll go ahead and subtract what we have in cell C25 with what we have in cell C30. So that will give us the difference. negative or equals C25 minus C30. Okay. It does look like we're at the end of our program. I apologize if it was a little bit quick. Do you guys have any questions so far? If you do have to leave, we can go. All right. We do have more resources on our Plano website. Let me go ahead and show that real quickly for you. You can go ahead and visit some more resources on planolibrary.org and our blog, Plano Library Learns. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show what a finished budget looks like just for viewing purposes. You can see here that after you enter what your projected expenses are and what you enter in, then like for example, if our groceries was above, then you'll see here that it gives us the negative amount and it'll alert us that we need to change some of our spending or lower our expenses here. And then here for our savings section, if we were to add some or put in the savings amounts that we wanted, you can see that this is like the extra money that we would have for our discretionary fund or something like that. Okay. For the question, why is the difference showing up as red? We have set up the formula here so that if we go under what our monthly budget is projected, then it'll alert us. So we flip-flopped it based on how we want it to alert us, if that makes sense. So if we were to go under what our expected budget was, let's say it was, instead of 2,200, it was the 2,100. Then it'll let us know that we're actually under what our expected budget was. But if we were, if we had 2,300 as our monthly actual, then it'll show us that the difference is a positive number, if that makes sense. Okay. So when you have a monthly salary of every 2 weeks, what you can do is you can just go ahead and add it together, and then you can just put it on your monthly budget. Or if you want it to be added in the spreadsheet, what you can do is instead of job salary or job A salary, you can do like week or maybe paycheck 1, paycheck 2, something like that. That way you can keep track of the different paychecks within your monthly budget. And similar to how we added categories in our expenses section, you can add categories in your income section, so you can add them there. So if you have another source of income, you can add it there as well. And then that way you can account for that. On our template section, so let's say before we added all of this information, we can save this as a template. And then what you can do is you can rename your templates, and how you go ahead and copy over a spreadsheet is you're going to right click on the template, and you're going to click on move or copy. And then you're going to click on create a copy down here, and then you're going to click on OK. And what that does is it takes whatever that template spreadsheet is, and you can rename the spreadsheet to whatever month it is. So let's say we have May, June, and July. So we're going to enter in August. Okay. And then what you can do is you can click and hold down, and you can move the spreadsheet over to the end, and that'll take it to the end so that you have it in sequential order. Yes, with your question, if you have 3 paychecks per month based on when it falls, with our spreadsheet here, if you know that you may occasionally have a 3rd paycheck, you can go ahead and type in paycheck 3. And you can have it embedded in your template like this. So if it does fall on a month that you have it, you can enter it in. And if it doesn't, you can just leave it empty. Okay, so if there aren't any other pressing questions, we'll go ahead and end our class. Thank you for joining us. Once again, please visit our library website and our blog to see what we have there. We do post on there regularly for information, and you can always book a librarian if you have any detailed questions on how to navigate Excel.